Why on earth did you want to turn off the dome?
I like the sound of it.
뉴질랜드에서 결혼한 신혼부부 그엔다와 자일스가 영국에 도착하며 이야기가 시작됩니다.
Giles, look!
What?
Just stop! That house!
Gwenda, what on earth would you do with a vast place like that?
Live in it! And the agents are in Dilmouth. See, I was right to come.
마음에 드는 집을 발견한 그엔다는 당장 집주인과 연락해 집을 구경합니다.
It's a lovely big room, Mrs. Hengrave, but you can't see the sea.
집을 마음에 들어하는 그엔다. 그런데 계단을 내려가던 그녀가 갑자기 경기를 일으킵니다.
It's like vertigo. This house isn't haunted, is it?
I never heard so.
But someone died here.
In a house of this age, there must have been some deaths.
하지만 결국 두 사람은 안 좋은 느낌을 뒤로한 채 집을 구매했고 그엔다는 전부터 이곳에서 일했던 코커 부인과 집을 정리합니다.
I'll do it now then. Oh, how silly of me. I always think there's a door through here.
자일스의 직장인 런던과는 거리가 있었지만 두 사람의 행복한 신혼 생활이 시작됩니다.
Looks like you're going back to old times, miss. Come across the old steps, see? Just like you want them now. And someone planted over and covered them up.
You want a view here down to the lawn and the sea? To match this, a white background and bunches of red and blue flowers.
That door downstairs to the dining room you said you wanted. Well, red scrapes and plaster away. He said there's been a door there before.
I knew there was a door.
Common sense, really.
집을 수리하던 그엔다에게는 자꾸 의문스러운 일들이 일어납니다. 우연히도 그녀가 원하던 것들이 집의 과거 모습과 닮아 있었고 그녀가 골랐던 벽지도 과거의 벽지였죠. 정체 모를 섬뜩함을 느낀 그녀는 방을 뛰쳐나왔다가 계단에서 다시 한번 기분 나쁜 환영을 보게 됩니다. 그러던 그때 전화가 걸려왔죠. 런던에 가 있는 자일스에게 걸려온 전화였고 그에게 다음날 그의 친구 레이몬드의 집으로 오라는 연락을 받게 됩니다.
Yes, I will.
그리고 다음날 레이몬드 부부와 그들의 숙모 미스 마플을 만나게 된 그엔다.
My mother died when I was born. We were living in India, so my father sent me out to New Zealand to live with relatives.
자신을 소개하고 인사를 나눈 그엔다는 저녁엔 모두와 함께 말피 공작 부인 연극을 보게 됩니다. 연극을 보다가 갑자기 소리를 지르며 충격에 빠진 그엔다. 결국 자일스가 그녀를 데리고 나갑니다.
I must apologize. Gwenda's very sorry, and so am I.
Well, I wonder. Well, I don't like to interfere, but you think I might possibly speak to her?
That would be very kind. Yes, she'd like that.
Well, I think I'm going mad. I must be going mad. All those things that happened in the house, in Hillside, and then tonight.
연극을 보다가 계단에서 본 환영이 떠올랐다고 이야기하는 그엔다.
And I was there, on the stairs at Hillside, looking down through the banister, and I saw her lying there, her hair all golden, and her face. She was strangled. There was a man. I saw his hands. She was dead.
Who was dead?
Helen. Why did I say that? I don't know any Helen. You see, I'm mad.
Now, you say that several things about this house seem familiar. The easiest and most natural explanation is that you've seen them before.
But I've never been in England until 6 weeks ago. I must speak to Aunt Alison.
In New Zealand?
다음날 자일스는 그엔다가 어렸을 때 영국에 잠시 살았었다는 것을 알아냅니다.
It seems her father took her to England after her mother's death, and on the way over he met a young woman on the boat and married her in London. I gather she walked out on him quite soon. That's why Gwenda was sent to New Zealand.
There you are, my dear.
Good morning, Miss Marple. We've got to find out, of course, who was Helen? And was she really murdered?
I do advise you most strongly not to do that. I was thinking of Freddie Lovelace. He was dairyman at Home Farm, and his mother had apparently once won first prize for chrysanthemums. Oh, long before Freddie was born. And when she died, he tried to find the certificate to have it framed. It was a grave mistake.
Turned out she hadn't won?
Oh, no, my dear. It turned out she wasn't his mother.
옛 부동산 중개인을 만나 아버지에 대해 묻는 그엔다.
Now, what was his name?
Halliday.
That's right, my dear. Nice fellow. St. Catherine's. Yes, that's what the place was called. He took St. Catherine's at 8 guineas a week. Didn't she run off with someone, that young girl, Halliday's wife?
So, the stepmother was young, and she had fair hair.
자일스는 그엔다 아버지의 혼인신고 정보를 알아냈습니다.
Calvin James Halliday to Helen Spenlove Kennedy.
But it can't have been her you saw. Galbraith said she went away.
How do we know? How do we know she went away?
헬렌이 새엄마 이름이었다는 것을 알게 된 그웬다는 외출을 나갔다가 우연히 미스 마플을 마주칩니다.
My doctor ordered me to the seaside for a change.
그동안 과거를 파헤치고 있었다고 말하며 미스 마플을 초대하는 그웬다.
No, we'll tell you everything. And you must come to afternoon tea and see the house.
신문에 헬렌을 찾는 광고를 냈던 두 사람은 한 남자에게서 연락을 받았습니다.
I've lost touch with her for many years. You should be glad to have news of her.
그는 헬렌의 사촌 오빠 닥터 케네디였죠.
You bought the house in Dilmouth, have you?
Yes. It's quite a strange coincidence. I hoped you could tell me all about it. My father and Helen. Well, everything.
Helen was coming back from India. She met your father on the boat. He'd lost his wife, fell in love with her, and she felt sorry for him. And there you are. It's hard to know how these things happen. They married in London, and then they came down to me. I was in practice in Dilmouth then. However, in less than a year, she ran away with someone else.
Who did she run away with?
She didn't tell me. They often had people to stay with them. I always imagined it was one of them.
There wasn't a divorce then?
Helen didn't want a divorce. That's why I imagine, perhaps wrongly, it was a case of some married man.
그런데 헬렌이 해픈 여자였다고 말하는
She got
케네디.
involved early on with the most unsuitable young man, and I took care of that. And then she elected to go to India to marry Walter Fane, son of Dilmouth's leading solicitor. When she reached Bombay and saw him again, it was all off. And then she met your father coming home. Do you know where she is at all? I'd like to get in touch with her again.
No, we don't know at all. That's one of the reasons we came to see you.
그리고 어딘가에서 신문 광고에 관심을 보이는 한 여자.
Anyone with a knowledge of Ellen Spenlove Halliday, née Kennedy, communicate with Messrs. Newman. Oh, that's Mrs. Halliday I was in service with at Dilmouth. You think there's any money in it?
Whatever.
I take it you're still determined to find the sanatorium where your father died.
Yes, we are.
Your father wasn't physically ill. The sanatorium in question was a mental home.
You mean he was mad?
He had a very severe mental breakdown. He was suffering from delusional obsessions. He was under the impression that he'd strangled his wife.
하지만 케네디는 그웬다의 아버지가 살인을 저지르진 않았을 것이라고 말합니다. 헬렌이 사라진 후 그녀에게 편지를 받았기 때문이었죠.
And another about 6 months later.
그리고 헬렌이 사라진 날의 이야기를 하는 케네디.
Kelvin was waiting for me in my consulting room. He'd been there about a quarter of an hour. And when I came in, he looked up at me and he said, I've killed Helen. It's true. She's lying there, strangled. So I got the car out again and took him back to the house. We went up to the bedroom.
The bedroom?
Yes, of course, that's where it happened. Of course, when we got in, there was nothing disturbed. The whole thing was an hallucination. So I gave him a sedative and put him to bed in the dressing room. I found a note in a waste paper basket in here, going away with the only man I've ever loved. I questioned the housemaid. I took her upstairs into Helen's room. We went through her things. She'd packed a suitcase and a bag before she went away. He went into the private mental home. And that's where he died.
Supposing he came in and found her writing the note. Suppose he saw red, grabbed a hold of her, he got his hands around her throat, and that's what you saw. She passed out, he thought he'd killed her, rushed off to get Dr. Kennedy. Well, meantime, she recovers or her lover...
헬렌이 죽었다고 확신을 하는 그웬다. 그리고 그때 저택에 도착한 미스 마플.
Oh, what a beautiful spot. Well, I do so hope that you've settled in by now.
I wish now we'd taken your advice. Once you've started, you can't go back.
I don't see how we can go forward.
There's always the possibility of X.
X?
Someone who hasn't appeared yet, but whose presence behind the facts can be deduced.
두 사람은 아버지가 지냈던 요양병원에 방문합니다.
Remarkable obsession, believing he'd strangled his wife in a fit of jealous rage. The delusion itself wasn't untypical. And what was lacking was the accompanying evidence of psychotic symptoms. But what I mean is, Mrs. Reed, he wasn't mad. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to complete his analysis. You knew, I suppose, he committed suicide. I'm sorry, I thought you'd been told.
Was he so unhappy?
Oh, no. It was guilt, not depression. He left this diary. I suppose you might like to have it. It's not especially important to the record, medically speaking.
What's true? I've written to James Kennedy. Let Helen come to see me, if she's alive. He says he doesn't know where she is, but I'm not deceived. He's a good fellow, and he knows I killed her. Because I always knew from the very first that there was someone else.
병원에서 돌아온 두 사람은 다시 미스
Have you
마플을
had any
만납니다.
response to your advertisement in the local newspaper?
No, not yet.
Not after 20 years of what one might call sleeping murder.
Well, it seems to me that we're looking for X. Someone who fell in love with your stepmother and strangled her in a fit of jealousy.
You see, there was the man she was going out to India to marry.
Oh, and then there was another man, someone she got mixed up with when she was very young. Most unsuitable, Dr. Kennedy said. So that's 2.
I think we may infer a third. Well, she was going out to India to marry Walter Fane, and as soon as she got there, she changed her mind. Now, why?
She met someone else on the boat going out.
Exactly.
It's what my father said. I knew from the very first there was someone else. We've got to trace all her lovers and question them to find the guilty one.
헬렌과 인도에서 결혼하기로 했던 월터 페인을 찾아간 그웬다.
Helen Kennedy came out to India to marry me, but then she changed her mind. On the boat going home, she met your father.
Were you on leave from India or something like that?
No, I'd passed all my law exams, so I came back here to my father's firm. I've been here ever since.
그리고 미스 마플의 도움으로 요리사로 일했던 페저트도 만나게 된 두 사람.
It's the game Lily and I used to have with you.
Lily was housemaid here, Lily Abbott.
그녀는 헬렌이 좋은 사람이었다고 말합니다.
Very fond of you, she was. Nothing more than a girl herself, really.
Do you have any idea who it was she went away with?
Well, sir, we had our suspicion.
Who was that?
Well, no, I don't just remember the name. They were staying at the Royal Clarence, him and his wife.
Summer visitors?
Or maybe both of them had known Mrs. Halliday before. Anyway, it was close enough to make people talk.
She was afraid of something, wasn't she?
Afraid?
Yes.
I remember Lily coming in one day. She'd been dusting the stairs. She'd heard the master and the mistress in the drawing room. I'm afraid of you. That's what Mrs. Halliday said. I've been afraid of you for a long time. You're not normal. Go away and leave me alone. Something of that kind. I don't know what I mean at all, telling you all this. Well, the plain fact is, Lily left you alone that night and went off the pictures.
그날 밤 일을 떠올리는 페저트 부인.
Oh.
Anything wrong, sir?
Oh, I was looking for Lily.
Oh, I do think Lily went upstairs. Oh. Gracious, Lily, where'd you spring from?
I just come down to get a glass of water for an aspirin. Is there anything I can do, sir?
I'd like you to come with me, Lily. We'd like you to look round her room. Thank you, Edith.
잠시 후 돌아온 릴리.
Dr. Kennedy took me up to her room. Wanted to know if she'd taken any clothes with her and what. Whatever made him think of that?
Well, she's left a note. Gone off with someone. Well, it's not likely to be Mr. Sobersides Fane, for all he follows her around like a dog. You think it's that colonel, then? Unless it's our mystery man in the flashy car.
그날 밤 릴리는 헬렌의 대화 내용이 떠올라 그녀가 살해당했을 거라 말합니다.
Just after you told me, I looked through the window and I seen the master coming down the hill with his golf clubs. So it wasn't him with the mistress in the drawing room.
Someone else.
이번에 두 사람은 로얄 클래런스에 묵으며 헬렌과 친하게 지냈다는 리차드 얼스킨을 찾아갑니다.
What a beautiful place. But we've actually just bought a house in Dilmouth.
Dilmouth?
Do you know it?
We spent a few weeks there.
Yes, we stayed at the Royal George. No, the Royal Clarence, wasn't it?
Did you see the way she was looking at me all
리차드에게 헬렌 이야기를 꺼내지 못한 채 나오게 된 그웬다는 다음날 다시 그를 찾아갑니다.
There's something I've got to know, and I think you're the only person who can tell me.
Oh, what was that?
I think you were once in love with my stepmother, Helen Kennedy. Were you?
Why did you want to know?
I want to know more about her. She left Dilmouth that summer and never came back. Didn't you know?
No, I didn't know that.
Everyone thinks she ran away with someone.
And you thought that was me? No such luck, I'm afraid. It all happened on the boat going out to India. Helen and I just fell hopelessly in love. Hopeless because she was going out to marry someone else. It was rather a desperate decision because she wasn't happy at home and wanted to get away. Hopeless for me too, of course, with a wife and 2 children. In fact, she didn't marry him. She went back home and met this other man. Your father, I suppose. 8 months later, my father died and I came into this place. My wife said she wanted a holiday while we were waiting to move into this house. So I said, what about Dilmouth?
You wanted to see Helen again.
So I thought. It was a mistake. Janet's a jealous woman.
헬렌이 실종되던 날 마지막 인사를 나눴다는 리차드.
Dear Dr. Kennedy, I hope you can help me about the enclosed. Do you think it means money or a reward? And I don't think, sir, she ever did because of what I saw out the window. I wouldn't like to do anything without seeing you because I never have been mixed up with the police and Mr. Kimball wouldn't like it.
릴리는 케네디에게 편지를 보냈고 그웬다의 집에 있던 미스 마플은 케네디를 만나게 됩니다.
I'm Dr. Kennedy.
Oh, how do you do? I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid Mr. and Mrs. Reed are away.
I have a letter here. Will interest them.
But that's all wonderful. We've heard from Lily.
This arrived this morning. It's your Home Office chap's report on the handwriting sample.
And he says the letter and Helen's list are in the same hand.
세 번째로 찾아간 남자는 헬렌과 만났다가 케네디에 의해 강제로 헤어졌다는 제키의 블릭입니다.
Helen Halliday.
I had a bit of fun with Helen, and that's all it was.
But you saw her again after she was married.
Maybe I did. A couple of times.
별다른 이야기를 듣지 못하고 나온 두 사람.
I think this is his.
It must be. The Yellow Peril.
The mystery man in the flashy car.
I wonder what Lily's going to tell us this afternoon at Dr. Kennedy's. Do you think she really knows?
약속 장소로 발걸음을 옮기던 릴리는 누군가를 마주칩니다.
You did give me a surprise. What are you doing here then?
Gave explicit directions. They were very simple. Only a few minutes' walk up the road. More likely she decided not to come at all. Perhaps her husband stepped in. I've been thinking a lot about her lately. Who could have killed her? She had no enemies. Here's a photograph. Hear the news.
전화를 받고 경찰서로 오게 된 세
Lily
사람.
Kimball's body was found by a passing holidaymaker in the woods near the railway lines at Matchings Hall.
Should have gone to Woodley Bolton. I said in my letter.
We found your letter in her handbag, Dr. Kennedy. Advised her to take the 3:30 train from Coombe and to get out at Woodley Bolton. Most likely explanation is she agreed to meet somebody else.
Why are they digging in that spot?
Well, that was my idea. You remember when you first saw this house? You were struck by the fact that this window had no view to the sea. And then Foster found the old steps under the shrubs. But it seemed to me that somebody wanted to dig new steps, so they covered up the old ones.
It must have been my father. Who else could have done that?
Oh, I don't think we must jump to conclusions.
It was one of three people. Walter Fane, Erskine, or Jackie Affleck. And whoever it was murdered Lily this afternoon. Presumably the inspector is checking alibis.
Here's your tea. Thank you, Mrs. Cocker. Could you put it there?
Excuse me, Mrs. Reed.
Miss Marple was right. Found what we were looking for.
What is it? I knew it. Oh, it's all right, Mrs. Cocker. Oh, my life.
충격받은 코커 부인을 병원으로 데려가는 케네디와 병원까지 동행하는 자일스.
Will you warn the hospital we're on our way?
그리고 사건 담당 경위를 만나 긴밀한 이야기를 나누는 미스 마플.
Hello, Gwenda. I'm at the hospital. Mrs. Cocker's fine.
How long will you be?
About an hour.
Then I'll get the dinner on.
All right, marvellous, thanks. Love you.
Hello?
Hello, Gwenny. Mrs. Cocker's going to be fine.
Yes, no. Giles just phoned. Why have you come?
I wanted to see you, just as you were that night. A little girl standing on the stairs. I watched Helen come home. In those days, it was just across the road. She was with a man, Richard Erskine. I knew she was in love with him, planning to run away. And I should lose her.
It's you.
I didn't want to do her any harm. Just hold her close, tight, safe. Cover her face. Don't want to lose you, my dearest sister.
미스 마플의 활약으로 모든 사건의 범인인 케네디는 체포됩니다.
Of course, there were so many things that pointed to him. Dr. Kennedy didn't know that she was at the pictures that evening of the murder. He thought that she knew the truth and had sent him a blackmail letter.
케네디는 릴리가 자신을 협박한다고 생각해 그녀를 죽였습니다. 그는 릴리에게 일찍 기차를 타라고 편지를 보냈었고 그녀를 살해한 후 다른 시간에 쓰인 편지로 바꿔두었죠. 이미 죽은 헬렌에게 온 편지가 헬렌의 필적으로 감정된 이유는 헬렌의 편지와 필적 감정을 위해 제출된 헬렌의 필체 리스트 모두가 케네디가 쓴 것이었기 때문이었습니다.
Why didn't we think of that?
Because you believed what he told you.
We thought Helen was almost a nymphomaniac.
All she wanted was to get away.
그리고 헬렌은 남자를 밝혔던 것이 아니라 자신에게 집착을 보이던 케네디에게서 벗어나기 위해 결혼할 남자가 필요했던 것이었습니다. 헬렌과 결혼한 그웬다의 아버지는 케네디에게 아내를 잃고 케네디의 약물 투여와 속임수가 만든 죄책감으로 자신의 삶까지 잃게 되었던 것이었죠.
It was the play, you see. Cover her face. Those are words spoken by a brother who's just contrived his sister's death.
I hope she's really sleeping now.
이렇게 모든 과거가 밝혀지고 이야기가 마무리됩니다.